Hi, welcome to the Vibrant Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Christy, I'm your host, and welcome. So today I'm going to talk about how I got started as an entrepreneur, my story of basically moving from Hawaii, coming to New York City, and that experience. So stay tuned. Hi, this is the Vibrant Entrepreneur Podcast, and I'm your host, Christy Oshita. I was considering San Francisco or New York, and maybe it seemed like everyone went to San Francisco in Hawaii, so I thought I will choose the hardest place I could imagine. If it's the most unique, I must go there. So off I flew. And the crazy thing is that my friend, I actually knew no one. I didn't have any friends or family in New York City, so I just scared the shit out of my parents, and I kind of came up with this whole plan of all these people, and we my cousin's friends, daughters, auntie, she lives in New York, great, call her up, because everyone in Hawaii is our friends, right? Well, so I had this whole plan to make them feel comfortable, but let me tell you, I did not have a plan. I was winging it, and I had barely $2,000 to cover rent and feed myself. I was a broke girl. They have two broke girls. At least they had each other. I had nobody. I kind of had a friend, my friend Annie. So the only thing that worked for me was that I got on a plane, and my friend Annie was doing some type of community college summer program there because she was finishing her time at University of Hawaii. So she was in New York City, in Queens, Flushing. So I went to stay with her for 2 weeks. So I had 2 weeks to stay with her, find a place, figure out my life. And I basically did that. I got to New York City, I stayed with her in Flushing, and I started applying for jobs. Let me tell you, my friend was Craigslist. This was 2005, and I basically used Craigslist for everything, to find apartments, look for jobs, make new friends, go on dates, find people to help me who were also my date. I don't know. It was a long story, and it worked out for me. Not safe. Do not let your daughter move to New York City. That's the moral of the story. Don't let them move. It's a bad idea. Tell them all the horror stories and people get shot on the subway, because I have some stories for you. But anyways, I did it. I found a place in Brooklyn. Turns out windows are really important, and being the naive person I was at that age, I thought it's a room, and I would remember not having a bed, so someone lent me an inflatable bed. But the thing about an inflatable bed is it can't have holes in it. So if it has holes, what happens is when you sleep on it, it sinks and you're pretty much on the floor. Yeah. So it's not really a bed. But it worked. I mean, maybe it gave me a sense that I wasn't crazy poor. So I slept on this for a while, and it turned out that in New York City in July, when I moved around June, July, it's really hot. And a window is a good thing. I think I had a skylight, but I didn't have a window because it was a room between other rooms, which probably means it wasn't really a room before. But anyways, I stuck it out, and then there was Wi-Fi, so I had 4 other roommates. It was just crazy. I ended up getting a job in Hawthorne, New York, and it was at a jewelry store, a jewelry company, wholesale, and I got super excited, and they're like, well, if you're going to take this job, you have to actually move closer to Hawthorne because you're in Brooklyn right now. This place was in Sunset Park. So I said, okay, Craigslist, looking for I wanted to be near New York City, so the best I could do was something in the Bronx. So I found an apartment in the South Bronx with a man I'd never met before, and he was 300 pounds. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I was a little intimidated, but I was like, I love everyone. It's all good. But it turned out the apartment, the room that I was renting, it was extremely cheap, wasn't really a room is a stretch. It's kind of like a living room, and if you took took a ply board and you nailed it on 2 pieces of stick to create a partition, and you made a room. That's where I was, where there was no sound barrier, and then the floors were just extremely deteriorated that you wouldn't want to walk on it with your bare feet, which I probably did because I'm from Hawaii. So that's where I ended up living to take this amazing job in Hawthorne, and I ended up traveling, like commuting almost 2 hours each way, and pretty much being terrible at this job. I mean, I was terrible. I would fall asleep. I was supposed to like scroll through the numbers and magically, like, it was every month. It was like January, February, March, April, and you had to be like, yes, we need more heart-shaped bracelets. That's definitely in March. Oh, I can see the trend. We're gonna need more rings with pandas on it in January. Yep, let's order that. And I was like, I don't know what I was doing. Like, I just didn't understand how I was supposed to know. And she'd say, well, you should know that we need to order those things because there's a holiday that day or we're doing a sale. I was like, I don't really know. So I just ended up guessing. I'm like, but I think I did terrible. And the poor person who was managing me was like, you're not helping me at all. And I was like, I'm so sorry. It turns out I just want to do marketing, and I guess I thought working for a jewelry company I'd do marketing. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyways, we parted ways, and I was like, I need to get out of this apartment. So within basically 2 months of living in New York, I lived in a no window apartment in Sunset Park, and then I moved to not really a room, in a living room with a man in the South Bronx. And then after a month of living there, I told my roommate, this is probably too much information, but this is what made me, you know, New York, it's hard knock life. But I told him I was like moving out after, a couple weeks, and he was like, I'm not giving your deposit back. He started becoming very like mean, and I was like, man, I don't have another apartment yet, and all my stuff is here, and I'm supposed to be here for another like 2 weeks or something, or a week. It was really stressful, and I stayed with somebody, and then I stayed with another friend, all these friends that I just met within that amount of time, and I ended up finding, also on Craigslist, a girl who was subletting her space, her room, which turned out to be in Chinatown in Manhattan. So if you can imagine, if this was something I could afford, which was something like, it had to be under $700, and it was in Chinatown, and it was a living room. It was very small. It was the size of like a queen size bed, maybe. And then the worst thing about this, so my roommate gets mean on me, and then the long story is, which you probably don't know the long story. The long story, but the short story is that I found this place. I'm super excited. I go to get my stuff. The guy locks me out of the apartment. I'm crying. This guy who's helping me, we were probably on some type of date, but also it turned out he had a van and was helping me. I don't know, but it was just not good. So I ended up not getting my stuff, and then having to sue him in small claims court, moving to Chinatown, and not having a job now because I'd quit the other job, and kind of living with, it turns out, 2 other girls in this really tiny apartment. And the great news is the girls, turns out, didn't realize that their roommate was leaving. It's like she just told them, and one day I showed up. So the sense of friendship we created from that was really great. It was like, we like you because you are a random person who showed up in our living room, and there was like no like surrounding partition for the living room, so they would just walk out and be like, stranger danger, who's this girl? And even though I became friends with one of them, basically what happened is weirdly enough, this one girl and I were really good friends. Weirdly enough, like within like 3 or 4 months, they kind of kicked me out. So it was like a tour of New York City, I would say, like a tour of all the boroughs in a really like how to make friends and how to not make friends and get a job is really rough. And I just remember being so scared at different times, especially with that guy and my stuff, and being afraid, and just crying, like telling my parents to call me because I was scared, or my mom, and them saying, you know, you can always come back. But to me, that wasn't really an option. So I stuck it out. I ended up, after living there for a couple months and then being kicked out, I ended up kind of moving in with someone I was seeing at that time. So, I mean, I guess I ended up finding the place. I was with him for a little bit, but so that was my crazy story of how I tried different places, and you know, it was rough, and how it was really rough finding a job. And I thought, should I start my own business? Because I always wanted to start a business. But I think what ended up ultimately happening after I did telemarketing, I did sales, I did all kinds of things, okay? I was like, give me a job, I will prove myself. I ended up finding a job teaching tennis. And it was generally well paid, and then I could go and have some time to try to start my own business, which is what I wanted to do. So I tried to do a clothing business, a little bit of child's clothing business, and then I realized that there's a lot of money to make in tennis. So I remember emailing someone, posting an ad on Craigslist, and someone emailing, you know, posting an ad on Craigslist about offering tennis lessons, and someone emailing me how much it would cost. And I remember thinking, oh, what would I charge them? And I just like thought of a number, and like $60 for an hour seemed like a lot of money to me at the time. And I was like, okay, sure. So I said 60, and they're like, okay. And I was like, awesome. So I just had to find a tennis court, which was kind of weird, but I kind of found one on the Lower East Side. So that is basically how I started my tennis teaching career, but my realization that could be a business. And from there I started doing more lessons and thinking, how can I get more locations? Because that was what was the biggest thing that was hard about tennis in New York City, is finding tennis courts or a place to play tennis. And that was the start of Bumblebee Tennis. Like, you know, I would just basically search and figure out innovative ways to create tennis courts in the city. And so in another video, I'm going to talk about Bumblebee Tennis and my awesome, crazy ride with running one of the largest tennis schools in the city, and that we had so many locations. You know, we got to almost $500,000 in revenue, and we had leases with the city. We were doing summer camps in Gramercy and Lower East Side, and I don't know if we did summer camp, but we did Chelsea. We did classes on the Upper West Side. So we were all over the place, and it was like so awesome, but really stressful. So stay tuned. So in the next podcast, we're going to go over Bumblebee Tennis. And so I think the biggest takeaway from all of that, I just remember thinking to myself, God, I hope this just is one of those great stories I can tell one day, and that makes it useful, because this fucking sucks. This fucking sucks. I'm scared of my mind, and like I have no friends. I don't know if that's changed, but at least I can tell the story now.